is in trouble at AlphaTauri. So Nyck de Vries has been told that he has 3 races to save his F1 career at AlphaTauri. Is this just a bit of hot air being blown up from Helmut Marko just to get Red Bull in the press because it's something people are talking about, and obviously they expected de Vries to do really well after Monza last year? Or are we actually looking at a serious moment that de Vries could end his F1 career before we even make the British Grand Prix?
De Vries isn't ending his F1 career before the British Grand Prix. He's been bad, but they're not letting him go. They're not letting him go before Britain. Maybe at the halfway point, but like if you do stick Danny Rick in the car, which will be the most likely case.
But they have denied.
Yeah, which they have denied. Man, how he's not gonna drag that car. He's not gonna drag that car from last. It's not gonna be the second quickest car on the grid all of a sudden. He's not gonna be up there with Max challenging for race wins. De Vries has been bad. Don't get me wrong, but I think what I don't understand as an AlphaTauri team. I don't understand what they're expecting.
Let's throw it out there straight away. Nyck de Vries' results, his best is 2/14 in the opening 2 races. 15th in Australia, we can sort of forget about because it was that chaos and he got nerfed off by Logan Sargent, who is another driver who is apparently under pressure. Not sure I understand that one myself, because I don't see why you would go sticking Mick Schumacher, or even why Mick Schumacher would want to be in that Williams. You know, I don't see the point in that.
But I don't understand as Williams why you'd stick a rookie driver in who's not raced at 2 or 3 of the first 5 Grand Prix we've gone to and expect anything different. Again, like I don't understand where the lower teams are not good enough for like the likes of your Danny Ricks and things like that to go to the car. But those lower teams are also not wanting to pay the salary of those drivers either. So it works both ways.
Well, I know this is slightly going off course, but Logan Sargent, it has been rumoured that Toto Wolff wants Mick Schumacher in that car. Logan, 12th in Bahrain, really good result. We said that straight away. Really competent. 16th in Saudi Arabia, 16th after running into de Vries in Australia. Azerbaijani was 16th for Miami. He was pretty much bottom of the time race sheets all race long. So I would personally say Australia was a mistake, and Miami have been the 2 races that you go, Logan, you need to really pick it up. Would Nicholas Latifi have gone at this? You know, would he have performed just as well as you have done in these 2 races? But I think, and obviously later on in the season, we will look at doing sort of a half-term report on drivers, but you can't say Logan Sargent's doing a bad job, can you?
He's doing better than de Vries is, given the experience.
Yeah, but, I mean, he's not up with Alex Albon, but you wouldn't expect him to be.
You wouldn't, but like, you know, I reckon like Bahrain and Saudi, he was decent. Baku and Miami, he was absolutely nowhere. Australia, you know, he went and yeeted Nyck de Vries like
how
no
he
tomorrow.
Didn't get a penalty, I can't tell you.
Well, how half the grid got a penalty and half the grid didn't, I couldn't tell you either. But you know, that's by the by. So, but it's the inconsistent. But Sargent has rookie inconsistencies that you expect. You know, was he 20, 21, 22? Something like that. Yeah. De Vries was challenging for world titles in Formula E. De Vries has had multiple years of experience, whether he's not been in F1 specifically or not. Yeah. Like there's apples and oranges here.
Well, we're talking about a Nyck de Vries who was under Mercedes care for a long time. I want to say he was with another junior. Was he with Red Bull at some point?
I wouldn't know. That's you that I wouldn't know personally.
I remember him being under Mercedes, but I think I'm talking years and years ago. I can't remember whether he was under a Red Bull scholarship at one point. But anyway, he has been reserve driver for a Formula One team since 2020. He's not that old. They didn't sign him when he was like 2. He's been a reserve driver for 3 years, so he's had plenty of simulator drivers. He's had loads of FP1s for many different teams. McLaren. No, he didn't go out for McLaren, did he? He went out for Mercedes, Williams, and Aston Martin. And that's not just last season. He's done other free practice sessions. So I think we all expected a little bit more from Nyck de Vries, and obviously these rumours have started coming out because Daniel Ricciardo has gone to do a seat fit at AlphaTauri. Now that, to clear up to anybody, that is part of the deal. Daniel Ricciardo is a reserve driver for AlphaTauri, so he does need a seat available to go in that car if Nyck de Vries or Yuki Tsunoda can't race. I will tell you something now, though. The seat isn't going to make a blind bit of difference because the pedals need moving first because, AlphaTauri have the shortest team in the grid. And I don't think Daniel Ricciardo is that short. But in terms of the seat fit, it's a standard thing. But it does start rumours going. Helmet Marko's come out and said Daniel wouldn't be the first choice to go in that car, which is insane to me. Why wouldn't you put him in the car?
That's just the senile old man. He would.
Yeah, you got to stick him in and see if he can still do in real life what you're now seeing on the sim.
Yeah, and also if you genuinely see him as a genuine replacement for Checo, which let's be honest, realistically is between Checo and Danny Rick. If you did get rid of Nyck de Vries, why would you not stick him in the car to see if, like you said, if his sim pace equates to real life and he's dragging the AlphaTauri. If they were to replace de Vries, if I was Yuki Tsunoda, I'd also be very, very worried, because if Danny Rick ends up taking the seat and ends up coming into the seat and kicking my ass, right? Then as Tsunoda, as good as your season has been, do you have much of a future? Do you have much of a future in F1?
Well, we can look at the past of Red Bull and go, well, at this moment in time, de Vries is lucky to still be in the car. We look at Christian Klein, who did a decent job in a very new Red Bull team. We can look at Jaime Alguersuari, Jean-Eric Verne, Sebastian Buemi. I literally have the list here. So Neil Ghani, who never made it to Formula One, probably should have done. Philippe Albuquerque. We have Oliver Oakes. Now, he never made it past Formula Renault for some reason, and Red Bull never wanted to carry him past that. You have Antonio Felix da Costa, who never made Formula One with Red Bull. You had Sergio Sette Camara, Dean Stoneman, Callum Ilott, Richard Verschoor, Dan Tipton, Jack Doohan even was part of Red Bull. De Rouvler, Yuri Vips, obviously he shot himself in the foot, and the list goes on. And Michael Ammermuller, if you go back further enough. Obviously there's the success stories, drivers who did make it from Formula One, even with or without the Red Bull backing, but being part of their academy at some point. So you got Patrick Friesacker, Enrique Binoldi, Tsunoda, Seitz, Verne, Buemi, Scott Speed, Bourdais, Gasly, Verstappen, Albon. We could go on forever. Liuzzi, Vettel. However, not said Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel yet, but this season, Red Bull have, we've said it a few times, they have not a huge amount of choice. So their current drivers in their junior team, we will throw these out there. There is only 2 drivers with championships on their cards in the junior academy driver. Recently, they've signed a few more, but still no actual championships in their hands. So realistically, your only choice is to go in that car, and there's a lot of them at F2, is Dennis Hauger, who seems to be either getting into many mistakes in F2 or bad luck or whatever you want to call it. He's not doing what he needs to do as a second-year driver in F2. Liam Lawson, who's gone to Super Formula, who seems to have more lives than Red. I don't know what he has on Helmet Marko. He has something on him because he's been there. I mean, I will go on just very quickly for Liam Lawson. I mean, Liam, if you are watching, which I doubt you are a very quick driver. But since I think it was F3, FAA F3, we saw you in for Red Bull. We've had 11th in the points with a couple of podiums. We've had 7th at Macau. Then we had 2020, 5th in the points. Last season, 9th in the points of Formula 2. Yes, the seconds or thirds in the winter series. And then you finished 3rd in Formula 2 last year. And then they've sent you over to Super Formula, where you're doing really, really well. Don't get me wrong, really, really well in Super Formula. I think right now it is 3rd in the points with a win in the opening round at Fuji. So Liam Lawson, probably top of the list out of them two in terms of drivers who could come in. You've also got Jack Crawford, only just gone to F2. Iwasa, currently fighting for the F2 championship. I think he might be championship leader, not 100% sure. Isaac Hadjard, only just coming to F2, not hitting the ground running, so why would you put him in F1? Enzo Fittipaldi, he's got the experience F2. But again, new to Red Bull Driver Academy. The only reason you'd sign him is because you thought he was going to dominate this year's championship, and he's not. And Zane Maloney. And then you're looking back at Sebastian Montoya back in the F3 championship, who obviously isn't ready, even though he's done many races with his dad, Le Mans, Daytona. He's not ready for Formula 1 just yet. He probably will be. So your only choice really is Hauger, Lawson, and Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi you'd only stick in because of the name, because he's not performing this season to the standard Red Bull probably expected. So it's got to be Daniel Ricciardo, hasn't it?
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, I just checked. Iwasa's currently third. Pocher is currently leading the F2.
Yes, that's right. He was leading before the last round.
Yeah. So here's the thing. With Maloney, with Fittipaldi, I don't see it. I think it's hype. Liam Lawson, just not. I don't think is good enough. Hauger, I don't know why he's been as part of the team as long as he has done. Iwasa, you're not going to take out because, as you say, he's competing for the F2 title. Maybe he gets pushed up next year.
Yeah.
But you and I have had this conversation multiple times. The current crop of Red Bull junior drivers is not good enough. Yeah. They're looking for the next Max Verstappen, but this current crop is not of that level. For all the drivers they've had go through their academy, and we've read off the list. They have had some semi-successfuls with Scott Speed, Liozzi, Klein, Kvyat, and they've had some very, very successful with Danny Rick, and obviously ultra successful with Seb and Max. But Red Bull miss more often than they hit. And
just to quickly throw that out there, I mean, they've backed people like Tom Blomqvist for a season, Lewis Williamson for a season. One person they did back for a season, Alex Lynn in the GP3 series, and he went and won the title at, if I remember it, pretty much a canter, and they dropped him.
It makes no. That's what I mean. That
he did what they needed him to do.
It makes some of the decision making makes no sense whatsoever, and I'm sure I I don't know why Helmut Marko's been in the position he has been in for as long as he has. But genuinely, maybe it's time for a change. But no, like you've got the GP the GP3 title standings from when Lynn won it. He won by 40. He won by 44 points. Like what more do you?
He didn't have to even win. But wait, he podiumed twice in the last 6 races. While Dean Stoneman, who had just come back from illness and was racing really well, another guy who Red Bull have backed at some point, it took three wins, a second, and retired in the last 5 races, and he still couldn't catch him.
That's what more do you want the man to do?
Yeah, and while people may say that season wasn't filled with people who could dominate a championship, you did have Marvin Kirchhoff, who's gone into GTs. Emil Bernstoff. Hello, Emil, if you were there on the Twitch channel, because we have spoke to you before. Emil, who's currently streaming because he can't get a drive because his rating's too high. It's madness. You get this silver gold rating thing because he's raced recently. He can't get in a drive because people need a silver driver and he's not a silver driver, or vice versa. Nicky Ellerly, who's done well in Porsches, Dino Zamparelli, and Jan Markenborough, who is now having a film made about him and finally returning to racing after 2 years. So actually, that whole... I'm just trying to have a look now. Luca Giotto was in that field at one point. Patrick Niederhauser. And some of these names might mean something to some people and not to others. Karma Jorda was in there as well. Just to slip in the terrible results she got. But you look at that field and it's just full of people who have bags of talent, but have either been screwed by money or screwed by licensing status.
Which is why Lewis is, going back, I respect Lewis so much when he goes, as much as the sport thinks it's changed, nothing in this sport has changed.
No, I mean, there's plenty of drivers there who could very easily have a nice GT drive and can't because of the licensing. And you think Red Bull backed a few of these drivers and just dropped them at a hat when they could have been the ones helping fund them to get through. So that's why we think how we do about the Red Bull Academy. But the long and short of it, Nyck de Vries, do you think he has a chance of finishing this season off? And if he doesn't, who are AlphaTauri sticking in the car and why? And we'll both answer this.
He does have a chance. He does have a chance to finish the season, absolutely. But he needs to get his collective shit together. I think. So where do we go? We go Imola, Spain, Monaco. Then we go to Canada.
Monaco, Spain, Canada. Let me just bring up the calendar because then it's easier for us because we don't want to have to think on this show. We don't think. That's why we've never done a quiz yet. We don't want to have to think. There will be quizzes coming up on this. We go Imola, Monaco, Spain, Canada, Austria, Britain, Hungary. And that takes us to winter break.
If he's not got his stuff together by the time we come back to Canada, from Canada, he's gone.
Yeah, actually, after Belgium is the winter break because it gets confusing. You should have a German Grand Prix in between Britain and Hungary. Anyway, that's going back to classic calendars, which we will have a video on very, very shortly. And if he's consistently like dropping results, I reckon by the end of Austria he's gone. End of Austria, I'm gonna say, yeah. So let's say he doesn't pick up his results, he's gone. Who are you sticking in the car and why?
Danny Rick. You get to test him out Obviously, Checo's contract's still not signed. They're obviously discussing the contract, things like that. You get to see if his sim results are on par with him in real life, and you also give Checo something to think about him picking up his results as well, and also you get two Red Bull drivers in the Red Bull seat, which is what Red Bull always lean to. They want two Red Bull Academy drivers in that seat at all times. That's how that since they become a successful team, that's what they've wanted since like the end of Mark Webber, and that's what it comes back to.
I agree. I think De Vries maybe might get till Britain, possibly, but after that, it's going to be really difficult to excuse him. Remember, Daniel Ricciardo made his debut in Britain for HRT all them years ago. I think it's 2011, 2012. So it'd be ironic if he came back for that Grand Prix. But yeah, for me, you stick Daniel in the car. Like you say, you get the updates, you get the correlation with the sim. You also get to try Yuki against a proven asset. I know Daniel didn't have a good last season for McLaren or a good run at McLaren, but he is a proven asset. He's a race winner. The only other person you stick in is Liam Lawrence. He's got nothing to lose over in Japan. If you pull him away from that, that's the way he's going to get his chance in Formula One. If he wants his chance in Formula One, he just has to leave Japan whenever the chance comes up. And if that means in the middle of a championship challenge, it's how it needs to go. But we have seen Pierre Gasly. It works for him. So could we be looking, in my mind, at Daniel Ricciardo coming in, maybe Liam Lawson getting a drive near the end of the season, especially around somewhere like Suzuka that he will know by then, and then possibly an all South Atlantic, South Pacific, however you want to put it, lineup of Liam Lawson and Daniel Ricciardo at Alpha Tower next season.
I don't think Daniel Rick goes to Alpha Tower. I do not think next season Daniel Rick is in that. I don't think Daniel Rick wants to be in a position where he's just happy for the sake of being in F1. I think he wants the Red Bull seat.
I think he does, but if it's the only choice, and for me,
then
he has to race next season.
Then I think, I think given the way Tsunoda's doing, unless he physically comes into the seat, they replace De Vries and he totally kicks Tsunoda's ass. You can't get rid of Tsunoda. Tsunoda's been one of the, I hate to say it, but Tsunoda has been one of the drivers of the year, given the way he's dragged that car. So under what pretenses can you kick Tsunoda out of that seat? You can't.
But for me, even if he drags the car to good results, and I'm talking good results as in non-points, so like his 11th, his 12th. Yes, he's dragging it to good, but he's not dragging it further enough to get points, which is what makes prizes. Are we looking at Yuki can come in? Has he bit the bullet with his previous seasons where he hasn't performed? And you go, he hasn't managed to drag it, even when he's on top form now. Hasn't managed to drag it to constant point positions.
I will give him to Canada, and then I'll give you an answer to that. Based off what he's done so far, I can't say that. But if we're getting to Canada and he's still doing the things of he's letting Magnussen go, he's letting Magnussen go past when Magnussen has older tires, and we've not seen the Yuki mistakes, but he's not making the overtakes that he was making in F2, then we have a conversation. At this moment, I think it's very, very unfair.